Welcome to this week's episode of the Monocle Banking Podcast, brought to you by Monocle Solutions. Now, this week we've got a special guest with us, Christo Davel, who's head of Client Enablement at Nedbank Insurance. And in today's dynamic digital landscape, Nedbank Insurance has been at the forefront of transformation. It's launched 18 digital solutions across 6 channels in the last 4 years. So we're going to dive into their digital journey, the innovative solutions they've implemented, and the impressive results they've achieved so far. So let's get started. Insurtechs have certainly transformed the insurance industry by putting customers at the heart of all of the innovation that we're seeing in the market at the moment. Using smart technology, they've made buying insurance simpler and faster. And let's face it, it's not something that anyone really rolls out of bed and is excited to do, buying insurance. Instead of waiting weeks for a claim, for example, to be processed, some insurtechs use AI to approve claims within minutes. They've also created personalized insurance plans that better fit our individual lifestyles and needs, making it easier for people to find the right coverage. And despite their successes, insurtechs have also grappled with significant challenges, including navigating a very complex regulatory landscape, building customer trust, and integrating with legacy systems, as well as ensuring things like data security. Well, today's guest, as I said, is Christo Davel, who is in the trenches, so to speak. Christo, great to have you on the podcast. Tell me a little bit more about your career trajectory and what led you into the insurtech world.
Hi, Michael, and thank you for hosting me on your program. Yes, I've been in the insurance industry now for just on 7 years. I worked at Nedbank previously and then got transferred to the insurance business, where I now head up the Client Enablement role. It really is a fancy word, let's say, for the typical COO sort of position. I look after technology and operations, among other things.
And your educational background, did you always kind of envision yourself fulfilling this position?
Oh, no, not at all. No, I actually started out in the sort of analysis environment, data analysis, etc. But it's interesting how the path leads us.
Absolutely. And where did you grow up?
That's a good story. KZN actually studied at Tux and then formally entered the working environment sort of in 2002. 2002.
And where else have you worked apart from Nedbank?
I started off in a small consulting company, a firm called Intact Solutions. And really, that consulting company did work with Nedbank back in the day. They don't exist anymore. But after leaving the consulting company, I joined Nedbank and have been with the bank now for almost 24 years.
And it's a bank. I've had Paul Morley on the show talking about its digital journey that has certainly embraced the new way of doing things and moving many of its systems into the cloud. You've recently launched Avery, which has been very successful in the market. So a bank that is looking at technology as a key enabler dovetails quite nicely with your title. But talk to me about how you've approached the insurance offering, because as I said in my intro, you've launched 18 digital solutions across 6 channels in the last 4 years. So you've been very busy. Can you just walk us through some of the key digital initiatives and the impact that they've had on your client experience and your operational efficiency?
Sure, yeah. Thank you for that, Michael. We started off our program in 2020. It certainly was not simple. It was quite a complex journey for us. We paid lots of school fees in the beginning. And I think like many other insurers, we started by focusing the first phase of our digitization journey by bringing insurance solutions to clients. And we started off with the more simpler insurance solutions. In other words, those solutions that actually don't require a lot of information from the client, such as funeral. And then gradually expanded into more complex short-term insurance solutions and thereafter life insurance solutions. And now starting to wrap up what I believe to be the first phase of digitization. Really, in essence, that first phase is just bringing the solution to the client in a seamless way on their mobile device, in a way that they can interact with, learn more about, and choose to take up if they wish, without having to speak to a consultant. And now we're beginning what I call the phase 2 part of digitization, which really is going to be focusing on enabling client self-service.
Now, looking back at the first phase, I've always thought that traditional banks are probably at an advantage to traditional insurance companies when you talk about the digital transformation journey, because it's just the nature of banking that we access the app almost daily. There's a lot of interaction. Whereas in insurance, yes, onboarding someone can be done seamlessly digitally, but it's not something that that you really should be accessing daily, unless you've got terrible luck and you've got multiple claims. But it's not one of those that really lends itself towards that level of client engagement and interaction. But building an insurance or an insurtech business inside a bank, has that enabled a degree of learning, of being able to leverage the existing Nedbank client base to maybe overcome some of those challenges?
Oh, absolutely. We refer to what you just described as our unfair advantage of being an insurer within the bank.
Yeah.
Spot on. It is much, much easier for us to leverage the capabilities that have already been built by the bank. And by the way, the bank's objective with regards to digital is to be first in digital and digitally first. So leading that transformation enables us just to piggyback on the back of the investments that have already happened. But there is a second advantage, and that is that we're able to position a relevant insurance solution on the back of a banking need. And let me give you an example. Let's say, for example, you've got your home loan balance and you're swiping on your mobile application to look at what your balance is doing. We're now enabled to position the insurance solution that maybe supports that home loan or supports that home that you bought on that very same screen. And I think that's really powerful.
Yeah, I mean, that to me is hitting a sweet spot. And I know the old bank assurance model tried to do this, but I think now in a new digitally enabled way with the data we have at our disposal, it becomes a far more compelling value proposition. Talk to me about what you've learned in developing the capabilities in the first phase. And from a data analytics and project management perspective, what are some of those learnings that you're going to take through into building out the second phase?
Right. So I think there are two answers to this question. The first one talks about the importance of agility in your digital environment as you execute. There are lots of things that one learns as you embark on this journey, things that you couldn't foresee in any possible way. The traditional program management approach of waterfall execution does not work with digitization. You've got to be so agile, learn on the fly, test all the time what's happening and what's working and what's not working, and then adjust. For us, that was perhaps maybe one of the first errors that we made. We tried to tackle this program very systematically. It doesn't work that way. You've got to be very agile. From a data perspective, we were not prepared at all for the amount of data that digitization was going to unlock for us. And what we now do at Nedbank Insurance is we measure every click of every client as they engage with every single one of our solutions. Now, that's really important because it gives us a sense of where the client might go slower, where they might get stuck. And that, again, in turn, informs us where our journeys might be too complex. Digitization is very, very much about removing complexity. And so that's really important to measure data and manage that quite carefully.
Very interesting that you touched on the need to be agile. And often I think when we look at the fintech or insurtech space, it was always the smaller, nimble, more agile startup type fintech solution provider partnering with a more established incumbent. Have you developed all of this capability in-house? And maybe you can just share a little bit more about how you then make a data project digestible for all the stakeholders to facilitate quicker and more effective decision making.
Yeah, we commenced by doing all of the digital work in-house, but soon learned that there are some really awesome fintechs out there that we could partner with that would assist us in our journey towards simplification and automation. And I'll give you one example of what we recently deployed. In two of our solutions, Dent and Scratch and Tie and Rim, these are both vehicle value-added solutions. We have partnered with a company, international company really, who's deployed artificial intelligence into our system. Now, that intelligence measures and monitors photographs of before and after events of, for example, a vehicle. And then through AI, that process does an automatic claims assessment as well as a payout. Now, no human can be as quick and as accurate as what we're seeing coming through that artificial intelligence partner. The data on the back of this is really important. Again, you've got to train the model. It doesn't start from a base of being perfect. So the model needs to be trained with the assistance in the beginning with some agents, and then eventually it matures and sort of runs on its own.
So that data, warehousing of the data, the cleaning of the data, the accessibility becomes absolutely critical. I mean, to enable that kind of service and innovation and development as well, it must require a certain degree, I guess, of navigating the internal corporate politics as well to ensure that you get buy-in for data projects and resources are allocated in terms of budget and time. Was that a challenge early on? How have you navigated the political environment to ensure that you can align all the stakeholders, because everyone's got competing interests here at the end of the day? The FD wants to cut costs. The operations guy wants to improve the client experience. How do you ensure that these strategies are all aligned?
I think, again, here we were quite fortunate in the sense that Nedbank had been on this journey of being first in digital for quite some time and have therefore understood the amount of data and the importance of data accuracy and data management from the beginning. So for us, it was quite easy to slot in on the back of the bank and leverage the buy-in that existed already. From my perspective, I would say that we completely underestimated the amount of data that this would unlock for us. I mean, it is huge. To record every click of every client and everything that they do with us really is immense. So that data management component is extremely important. In fact, I think it is really impossible for any insurer to remain in business these days, let alone from a digital perspective, if they don't have a really good handle on data.
Yeah. And so give me an example then of how you are working within a highly regulated industry like insurance and banking with personal data to ensure that you can do this in a way that is in compliance with the multitude of different laws that we have now. POPIA, you've got GDPR globally, and how you manage some of the risks that certainly do come with such a data-driven approach.
Again, I think we were quite fortunate being in a bank. You know that the financial services industry and the banks in South Africa are really very highly governed. And I think that's really important. That governance structures that we have to adopt is quite important in terms of the protection of clients. So from a data warehouse perspective and the way that we manage data, we make sure that overall within the group ambit, we tick all the boxes. We take lead from our specialists when it gets to regulatory requirements, and our specialists when it gets to how do you actually facilitate data through the technology infrastructure in a way that it doesn't compromise the client, that it ticks all the regulatory boxes and enable the business at the same time. I think it's really easy to get stuck in regulation in a way that you can't move forward. Now, for us, that has been a problem, really, and I'm quite excited to say that I think the data journey of Nedbank Insurance and Nedbank Group's been quite a good one so far.
And we're discussing just a couple of days after the global Microsoft outage impacted by CrowdStrike. And the one thing it brought home for me is still how reliant many global businesses are on single vendors or single points of failure. How are you building redundancy into Nedbank's digital offerings? And maybe you can just share a little bit more about how you kind of plan for these kinds of events inside the bank.
Yeah, it is a crisis to just take a look at what's happened globally over the last couple of days. And it is something that we also experience from time to time. And I'll give you an example of where we are quite reliant on external data sources. We link into, for example, the Department of Home Affairs for certain validations when we look at claims handling or when we vet a dependent that's been nominated. Now, when the Department of Home Affairs goes down, it really is a problem for us because then it means that our clients cannot conclude their journeys on our digital applications. How we've started to think about this is to build static backup tables that doesn't stop the client from fulfilling the journey that they're busy with. So what we do is we refer the client to not necessarily such an automated process as they would have experienced before. It's a little bit more manual in the sense that they now have to capture more information on the digital application, but it doesn't stop the journey. And I think that's the really important thing here. When you're dependent on other service providers or other systems that might go down, you're going to have that backup plan that allows the client, even if it's a little less convenient, a little less automated, they have to be able to conclude what they're busy with. We also have a straight-through handoff to a real person if something gets stuck on digital. And I think that's been one of the great learnings for us over the last couple of years. The importance of human backup cannot be overstated.
I had an experience like that with my bank trying to get passports for my daughters. It wasn't the bank's fault. I went in to the Home Affairs desk inside the bank, but Home Affairs was offline. And, it's an online booking system. I had then to go and rebook, make a time to take them out of school. It was a huge inconvenience. So there's certainly a lot to be done inside Home Affairs in particular. I've just got to ask you as an aside, we've got a new Home Affairs minister in Leon Schreiber, and I'm sure he's got a lot on his plate at the moment, but surely Home Affairs has to have a look at its core IT systems. The system is offline has become a proverb inside Home Affairs. What would you like to see the minister focusing on?
Yeah, I think maybe just connecting with the business and trying to understand how do we sort of tackle these things and sort out problems that they're experiencing in the Department of Home Affairs. How would we tackle and sort that out? And that partnership with business might be quite useful in terms of crafting a way forward to mitigate the sort of risks and downtime that the DHA is currently experiencing.
Yeah, I think that enables a proper public-private partnership if we were to see, the minister leaning into businesses' experience. When you talk about learnings, though, can you also share an example where you, as Nedbank Insurance, have taken client feedback directly that's influenced a digital solution or an innovation at Nedbank Insurance? How iterative is the process from the time of launching a new product to maybe a tweaking or maybe even scrapping a project altogether based on the feedback?
It is extremely iterative at the moment. And I think this is what I tried to refer to when I spoke about that waterfall approach in execution doesn't work.
Yeah.
The agility is really important here. So it works in a couple of ways. One, you have to measure how the client responds using data and using their click-throughs in terms of your digital journey. That gives you a good sense of where clients leave or where they get stuck or where there is an opportunity for something to be simplified. But you also have to speak to clients. And what we've done in the bank, and we don't do this regularly enough, but what we've done is we sit down with clients and we actually present our digital proposition to them, the mock-up or the pre-launch sort of version of what we've busy building, and let them work through a task. It tells you then where the client get confused, but also the person has the opportunity to speak and provide feedback. They expected the button to be on the left-hand side, not the right-hand side. The balances maybe shouldn't be highlighted in this color, but in that color. And that sort of measurement is absolutely critically important.
Yeah, that customer journey, because you've got to design technology for human beings at the end of the day, and human beings are not foolproof. We come with our own foibles, and that sometimes can be contradictory to what a DevOps team might think is in the best interests of the consumer at the end of the day. Now, when you look at the future, and you talked a little bit about phase one and now launching into phase two, what does phase two mean for you? Is it more leaning into things like artificial intelligence and machine learning more significantly? What do you see as your big focus areas inside Nedbank Insurance in phase two?
Phase two for us is definitely going to start off by focusing on enabling the client to self-service. I mean, just think through the typical client experience. You've got to phone a contact center to log a claim. You've got to fill in some forms. Often it's manual. You want some feedback on the status of a claim. You've got to phone that contact center again. It's just self-service, or policy administration and servicing is really where the client at the moment experience a lot of pain points. And self-service is going to remove much of that pain, in my opinion. But it is very difficult to build self-service capabilities on digital. It's much easier just to present the client with a solution and they can take up that solution. So this phase two element, which is really going to unlock that self-service, it's not a simple journey. It's not going to be an overnight journey. I don't think in South Africa, we've definitely not seen any winners emerge from this space.
Why is it so difficult, Christo? What makes it such a big challenge to implement a self-service solution?
It is the simplicity that you have to build into digital journeys so the client doesn't get stuck. And remember also, when a client is busy with policy administration or logging a claim, they're feeling nervous, anxious. It's a moment of uncertainty for the client. Now, in that moment of uncertainty, they often want to refer back to a person. They want to speak to someone. So what you bring to them from a digital solution perspective has to be so slick. It has to be so straightforward. It has to be so intuitive and so informative that the client is willing to engage that self-service capability. So it's not like you're shopping around for something. You're in a problem statement and you need a resolution fast. And to crack that nut in digital is not going to be an easy journey.
Give me an example. I'm thinking here in my head of a geyser blowing up in the roof, for example, and I need to engage my building insurance or home cover or whatever it is to be able to whip out my smartphone, take a picture of the damaged carpet or countertop or whatever's been damaged by the leak, and to be able to submit that seamlessly. To me, that would make a whole lot of sense. Is that the kind of self-service journey that you envisage?
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's exactly where we're going. And in fact, you want to take it one step further. You want the insurer to phone the client, to tell the client, or to notify the client via digital application that we've picked up a problem on the geyser prior to them picking it up, prior to the client seeing it. So now this is where AI becomes really important, because AI can today give you the solution that can proactively warn if a geyser is malfunctioning. The best client journey is the one where the client doesn't experience any surprises and there is very good ongoing communication. Now, that ongoing communication via digital is something that is extremely important.
As we wrapping up, Christo, I know there are a lot of challenges in the industry from, modeling for climate change and all the rest, but I think probably one of the biggest in the South African context must be the talent gap that we have in areas like data analytics and cyber security. How are you approaching addressing the skills challenge? Do you grow your own timber inside the bank? And maybe you can give me a little bit more about the strategies that you're employing to attract and retain the top talents in the industry.
Yeah, Michael, you're spot on. There is a definite war for good talent out there. It's true from a data and digital capability perspective and advanced analytics. So it is quite tough to attract and retain good talent. We do have our in-house programs. And again, this is where we're quite fortunate that we're part of a group where we can leverage the programs within the bank. But we do have our in-house programs whereby we expose staff who want to accelerate in the data and analysis environments to training and exposures that helps them to grow those skills. But we also partner with external companies that provide to us the sort of analytical capabilities that we require in the bank.
And then just lastly, as someone with a varied career from consulting to financial services and now insurance inside the bank, what advice would you give to young professionals looking to make their mark in these industries?
It's something we often speak about. You have to be willing to work on anything. These days, you can't pick and choose, what's nice to do and what's not nice to do. And I think that's the one thing that sets apart people that sort of progress in the financial services industry, the guys that are willing to do anything, work really hard, put their heads down and get it done.
Absolutely. I mean, those are pretty much core Calvinist values of good work ethic and seizing your opportunity. Christo, thank you very much. It's been great to have the opportunity to pick your brain and share your insights and experiences here on the Monocle Banking Podcast. Take care.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for hosting me.
Well, to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. This has been another episode of the Monocle Banking Podcast brought to you by Monocle Solutions. Remember, you can find us on all good podcast platforms and just subscribe. That's all you have to do. We'll see you next week for more on the Monocle Banking Podcast.